It's such a cross-section of comments on the LIV Golf and the PGA now merging under an investment fund run by the Saudi Arabia. And it just cracks me up on this. Folks, there's so many fakes out there, so many frauds, so many social justice warriors. Everybody's got a price. You have a price. Just admit it. Everybody's got a price. If somebody walked up to you today, you don't have to love everything about a company, and somebody said, here's $20 million, you'd take it. You'd rationalize it. I see this all the time. I saw this during the presidential election where the evangelical Christians who are conservatives rationalized Trump's awful behavior with women. They just rationalized it. Why? Because they're conservatives and didn't want to vote for a liberal. So they rationalized Trump and really bad behavior. There's a lot of good conservatives out there who aren't narcissists and don't have 400 lawsuits and treat women with respect. Trump's not one of them. And you rationalized it. And that wasn't even for money. It was for a vote. So stop pretending you wouldn't take the money. Somebody offered you $200 million. I said this yesterday. I was offered, LIV Golf came to one of the properties I work with, and there was going to be $100,000 worth of advertising, of which I would have gotten a big chunk of it. And they also invited me to go to tournaments. And I said, thank you, but no thank you. And I just said, I'm not going to take it. But if it was $10 million, my wife would have looked at me and said, we need to have a discussion. It's $10 million. You can retire 7 years earlier. Yeah, I would have had a discussion. You think I'm going to sit up here and lie to you? Of course the number matters. Numbers matter all the time. We all make decisions. We all rationalize stuff based on a price or a number or what it does for our kids, our families. That's why I never on this radio dial, one of the things I've done over the years is gotten, less preachy. I think I was too preachy in my 20s and 30s. Life's gray. We all make decisions. We all rationalize votes and trips and who we support based on the money. How does it benefit us? How does it benefit our taxes? There's a lot of things that my conservative friends do not like about Republicans, but they generally are lighter on taxes. So they rationalize it. All right, I don't pay your taxes. But don't pretend you don't have a price, okay? Everybody does. And that's why this morning the Rory McIlroys have a little egg on their face, but he's a man enough to acknowledge it's probably better for golf.
When I try to remove myself from the situation and I look at the bigger picture and I look at 10 years down the line, I think ultimately this is going to be, it's going to be good for the game of professional golf. I think it secures it unifies it and it secures its financial future.
Some of your favorite golfers ever, the old heads, the old guys that you watched in the 60s and 70s and 80s, they were taking money from scrupulous characters, companies that you didn't have alignment with. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. Nobody cared. So your TikTok, made by China, authoritarian government, bad human rights record. NBA, by the way, is in bed with China. Remember all that kerfuffle? Remember all that stuff that Adam Silver and LeBron went through with China? NBA looks the other way on China. You watch the NBA. You love the NBA. Are you bothered by their relationship with China? Not enough not to watch. Not enough not to watch. Your iPhone, where'd they make that? You're on Twitter today. The Saudis have a big chunk of Twitter. Our government, when I hear, well, these golfers, Phil Mickelson didn't care about 9/11. Well, then our government didn't because their second biggest trade partner is Saudi Arabia. So spare me on the morals and the values and the preachiness. Is at some point everybody validates their life decisions. And the people that scream the loudest and lecture the most and are the most preachy. You can go to the Catholic Church. I was just watching a movie for about the 15th time a few nights ago, Spotlight. It's one of the great movies of all time. One of the great movies, one of the best written movies I've ever seen in my life. You start looking at our churches, our corporations, our government, our owners of our sports teams. You don't know what you don't know. Be very careful about lecturing others on taking $200 million which all of us, I've said before, I was offered this, no thanks. You know, if somebody would have multiplied it by 50, I probably would have said thanks. I probably would have felt some responsibility to my family. I would have validated the decision by me. Yeah.
You think Rory McIlroy talked to his family before saying no to over $100 million from the Saudis?
Do you know Tiger? I read it yesterday. I don't know if it's accurate. Tiger was offered like $800 million. Now, Tiger, of course, is worth $1 billion or a lot. So he turned it down. But
this is more than generational wealth. $100 million for Rory McIlroy is the next 5 generations are going to eat for you.
Well, depends. If you live in California, the government takes half. So
whatever, fine. Oh, fine. $100 million becomes $50 million. Oh, yeah. Come on.
But I see this all the time. It is, well, you're just selling out. You know, I hear this all the time. When a band goes big, oh, they sold out. Yes, all their shows. They sold out the Rose Bowl and SoFi Stadium. And when opportunities present themselves, all of us in America rationalize our decisions if we're a little uncomfortable with it.
Remember when I sold the website? People said, you sold out.
Yes.
You're different now. You're owned by USA Today. Come on. You're not the small, cool, hip website that you once were. You sold out.
You're one of the only bloggers who ever did it right. You built it, sold it quick, got out, and built it, and have a beautiful family and a beautiful house because you knew it wasn't a 30-year business. 90% of those bloggers now disappeared into the ether. Irrelevant. I would say 98%, completely irrelevant. You built it, sold it, got out, understood the timing of the market. There's nothing about it. You can't listen to the virtue signalers out there. Everybody's just, you go to all these social media, follower of Christ, and they're the rudest people on the internet. It's like, give me a break, okay?
A lot of, just remember, a lot of these media members bashing the PGA, they've never run a business. They have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know the finances of the PGA. Maybe, are they in dire straits?
Do we have that
Shipnuck
bite?
Yesterday.
Alan Shipnuck, get that bite again. Yesterday was a moment of clarity for me. Alan Shipnuck, who, by the way, again, this is a guy that covers it professionally for all the pearl clutchers, said this yesterday.
The European PGA Tour would have gone out of business a long time ago if it was not hosting its biggest money events in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Turkey, China. That tour has stayed in business in playing in these places with autocratic governments, and it's always been a factor in the sports world. I mean, you mentioned the EPL. I mean, half of those teams in the English Premier League are now owned by Saudi Arabia or other Middle Eastern interests, and so it always felt a little hollow and a little sanctimonious. Now, the tour's biggest sponsors, Coca-Cola, FedEx, Morgan Stanley, they all do business in Saudi Arabia. They have for a long time. So the lines got very blurry.
Yes, no reasonable person would deny what he just said. The lines have gotten very blurry. LIV was succeeding but needed to be on television. You're not a legitimate sport unless you have a TV contract. You got to be on Fox. You got to be on CBS. You got to be on a big dog. You got to be on television. I mean, that's why women's basketball is one of the fastest, it may be the fastest growing sport in the country. During March Madness, you had a young lady played for Iowa. Why is women's basketball growing? It's not the attendance. It's their television ratings. They're more viable on television. Therefore, women's basketball is growing. We're not counting seats for college basketball games in the Big Ten. Women's basketball is growing because the ratings are growing. And LIV had a hole in their business. We don't really have a legitimate business partner. Golf had a hole in their business. They're running out of money. They were having now to pay a little bit more money, right? They were under the microscope a little bit. You had 2 major sponsors pull out. And they're like, you know what we need? We need Brooks Koepka back. I don't think it's a coincidence when Brooks Koepka wins the PGA championship. You look at those ratings and you're like, we need him back on our tour. We need Phil Mickelson back on our tour. So you had 2 entities that both had a hole. The PGA Tour had a lot of Scotty Schefflers, great golfer. But if you're a casual, which most golf fans are, he didn't get you to a TV.